S2Ep04, clear takeoff, left hand. Takeoff left, it is 3 points. Left land, swim west, copy. 3 points. Crossing 24. Crossing 24 is runway.
Hello and welcome to the Blueskies podcast. I'm PR Ganapati, your host.
Just 70, roger, report type southeast, connection, 4, runway 28, and view selected.
It's my great pleasure today to welcome back to the program an old guest, Vice Marshal Nanodkar. As you would recall with AVM Nanodkar in the previous interview, we spent time discussing the Jaguar, particularly the maritime Jaguar, and also spoke very briefly about his taking a group of Jaguars to participate in the Cope Thunder exercise with the US Air Force in Alaska. And so today we're going to do a deep dive into that experience, planning, ferry, participation in the exercise, and then ferry back. And so welcome back to the program, sir. Thank you so much for spending time with us again and look forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Guns. It's always a pleasure to have a chat with you.
Likewise, sir. So, sir, you had told us last time, you were in air headquarters and then you were asked to see the Vice Chief, Marshal McMahon, and then he told you that you were going to lead a delegation. So just take us back to that. What was that experience like? What did you do by way of planning, the participation in Cope Thunder? And what is Cope Thunder? Why did we participate in it? And was this the first time that the Indian Air Force was doing anything with the US Air Force in the US?
Thanks, Gana, and it's really a pleasure, conversing about Cope Thunder after almost 18 years of its execution. So it brings back a lot of memories, a lot of nostalgia, so to say. And as far as the exercise that you mentioned, Cooperative Cope Thunder, Cope Thunder India took place just about a year earlier in Gwalior, where US Air Force had come and participated. And there they realized the worth of interacting with Indian Air Force pilots. And that is when the USAF chief sent an invite to Indian Air Force chief, that time Air Chief Marshal S. Krishna Swamy, and requested him to send Su-30s to participate in Cope Thunder in Alaska in 2004. And that time I had just been promoted and posted as a Director of Tactical Operations in the Air Headquarters. And that was in month of April that I came there. And in August, like I told you earlier, Vice Chief called me and he said, Sunil, you have been selected to lead the team taking Jaguars to Alaska for 2004 Cope Thunder. So now this was a jolt to me because I was shocked that Jaguars were selected to be taken to Alaska all the way. The machines were 25 years old, and we had just received refuelers 1 year earlier, and taking refuelers and Jaguars, I think it was a very big challenge. I kept wondering as to why Chief has selected Jaguars over Sukhois, which were new machines, fully capable of doing long distances, air-to-air refueling, and Americans had requested for participation of Su-30s. Then why Jaguars? Of course, I got the answer many months later as to what went off in Chief's mind that time. And because he had selected Jaguars, probably the team leader was ex-Jaguars, and that was me. So the moment I walked out of Vice Chief's office and went through the corridors all the way about 200 meters distance almost. I was wondering as to what am I going to do, how am I going to start, and when I went to the office, actually, everything was so blank in front of me uh, because this was not just a mere ferry from India to Alaska. Uh, One had to really think about how to get the refuelers, how to do the refueling en route, and what are the nuances of flying over international airspace. Because ferry is easier, short leg planned and executed based on the available routes that everybody understands. But this was something different. And anyway, I think it took me some time to gather my thoughts. And of course, we got down to planning. Somewhere down the line, after a month or so, we realized that trail planning, that is taking the refueler, doing the air-to-air refueling en route and landing at various bases, is called trail planning. And trail planning is an dedicated exercise by itself. And the Western developed countries would do that as a part of their big time training. And after a month and a half, we realized that that is what is required to be done. And luckily, to my good luck, one of my ex-flight commanders, then Air Commodore Murli Sundaram, he was sitting in UK as air attaché. He came to my rescue, though he was finishing his time and he was about to leave. But he did whatever he could in month of December, which was the Christmas time, and also 10 days to go for him to leave UK. And it was just that sheer, that flight commander and youngster relation, which probably hit the chord, and we got to send our team of people to do a trail planning study in UK, which the course is of almost 2 months, 1 month of ground schooling, and 1 month of practical training where they go through the trail planning and actual trail. Our guys did all these things within 10 days of training, and they came back and they did wonders, because of which we could handle all these things.
Right. So can
Now,
you just explain to us, what are the conceptual ways of thinking about it, the conceptual challenges? How does one approach trail planning, and how is it different?
yeah, so trail planning involves first understanding of the tankers and the receivers, because tanker may have fuel adequate or more to give to the refuelers, but refuelers may have restrictions based on their engine life, their maximum duration that is permitted on the engine, then other systems, that is the oil availability and stuff like that. Uh, so it's an intricate process of understanding both tanker capability and refueler capability. Second, one of the very, very important activity is whether that aircraft, because the Jaguars are not capable of doing air-to-air refueling at very high altitudes, whereas aircraft like F-16, F-18s, F-15s, and also Su-30s, Mirage 2000, they can do refueling at much higher altitudes. So when you have these kind of restrictions on platforms at both ends, then availability of refueling corridors. It is not that any PDR that is a predetermined route, en route, you can get into and start doing refueling on those routes. There are special earmarked areas where you can do refueling at various altitudes. So all those things have to be considered when you plan your trail. And trail means it's a big big uh, group of aeroplanes of various makes and various capability, which are traveling in that space for some duration of time. So it is not that every time you have the refueler traveling with you, because the fighters can go refuel at maybe lower altitude and step up their altitude, and refuelers can come down to that refueling altitude and go much higher probably, and travel. So all those changes of altitude in the international and constrained or the controlled airspace is something that is very, very challenging. And for that, very, very intricate planning is required. Secondly, the number of time on that lake that you are going to refuel, all these variations are going to take place in that confined space. So all these things have to be planned. Now that is a planning part of it. Now you have to cater for contingencies. Should the refueling fail for the receiver, then what are the contingencies? You need to have diversions considered at every place. Then you have to alter probably altitudes based on the fuel availability in the fighters. So it's a very, very intricate process of planning that goes through when you plan a trail. And that is what was a big, big learning for us, because we had never done it earlier. We had no clue as to how to do it. And the Royal Air Force really came into our rescue, and particularly Air Commodore Murli Sundaram, who was there in UK, who tied up everything for us. And at the end of it, our champions who had gone to do the course, they came back, learned the software that was being used there, the logic of that software, because the software was not given to us by the Brits. Okay. But this group of people came back, they put all the logic into their thought process, and they developed a software for Indian Air Force which is used even now. And at the end of the Cope Thunder, we realized that our software, and this is what the Royal Air Force people also told us who were operating with us in Alaska, that your trail planning software is much, much superior in terms of its executability and its content than what we use it, and we need to go and upgrade our software to your level. So that was the big takeaway as far as, and hats off to guys who, a small team of people, one officer and couple of airmen sat in air headquarters, and we did entire software planning for trail, and we practiced over and over again during our practice sessions in India, and then executed the trail plan. And really hats off to those boys. I still remember each and every one of them, because if not for them, we would have been in doldrums.
Right. So, let's illustrate this with a practical example, sir. So, your first leg, did you leave India, perhaps out of Jamnagar or some place like that? And which was your first destination? And at what point did you refuel? And, how many hours out was that? And how early before you did the tanker have to leave? So if you can give us a sense for what this translates to in a, maybe a actual leg, that will really bring it alive for the audience.
So Ganga, I'll just go into a little bit of overall thing about the exercise. We actually, after we got the go ahead, there were plans to have an initial planning conference, mid planning conference, and final planning conference as far as the US Air Force's planning was concerned. So what we did was, because we didn't have so much of time, so we skipped the mid-planning conference, and we just did the major activity during initial planning conference, for which a team of 5 officers went to Alaska during winters, that is sometimes during month of Jan-Feb of 04, and we understood what is required to be done, both in terms of getting there and operating from there and getting back. So that was the first activity that we did. And of course, the final planning conference happened in May 04 in Hawaii. That is where the command headquarters of PACAF is. So we did these 2 planning conferences and skipped the mid-planning conference, because we felt that was not required, and we had covered the entire ground during these 2 conferences. So that was one thing. Then, of course, we started the activity as far as the exercise is concerned physically on 21st of June 2004, where the chief and AOC in CWSC flagged us off from Ambala on our first leg to Jamnagar, which was the internal leg before we left India.
Right.
And then, of course, that was a time, uh, 8 aircraft we had taken, 8 Jaguars, uh, which of course had 2 aircraft which were standby aircraft to be left in Jamnagar, uh, and 2 IL-78 and 2 IL-76. Now that our composition was like this, we had a scout IL-76 going about half an hour early uh, in the trail. So
Okay.
it would get airborne. Uh, it would go ahead about a half an hour, followed by the first cell. We used to call cell because the cell consisted of one tanker and 3 Jaguars for the final part of exercise. But till Jamnagar, we had 4 Jaguars refueling. So we did one tanker and 3 Jaguars, followed by another tanker and 3 Jaguars, and we had a trail IL-76, uh, getting the final the team of people who had seen off the second cell. So that was a rough composition.
Right.
So in Jamnagar, we were seen off by the AOC there, and the principal director of offensive operation. That's my boss, then Air Commodore Gogoi. He saw us off from Jamnagar, and the first leg was up to Doha, which was considerably the shortest leg in our entire trail.
Right.
So during leg to Doha, we had just one refueling.
That was first leg getting us into Doha. Then from Doha, we went to Egypt, a place called Jayankalis, which is Egyptian Air Force base, uh, and that base was, had given us facilities, but it was a little away from where we were staying. We were put up in Alexandria, but Egyptians had a very, very stringent visa requirements and stuff like that. So by the time we landed and left for our rooms, it was almost 6.5 hours at the base. But then we got to know the Egyptian Air Force and their operations, their way of methodology of you know uh, a little bit of flying the F-16s there. So that break was useful, I
Right.
would say. And then from Giancalis, Egypt, we went to uh, a base in Italy called Pratica de Mare. That was once again a Italian Air Force base where the ambassador of India himself received us. Uh, uh, we all know Vishnu Shom because of NDTV. His
Right. Right.
father was the ambassador there,
Oh,
and he
okay.
received us there.
Right.
And from Pratica de Mare, Italy, we went to mainland Portugal. Again, a Portugal Air Force base called Montereal, which is very close to Lisboa, and that is where we landed. Now, from Lisboa to Azores Island, which is in Atlantic Ocean, that was the first time we entered Atlantic Island. Now, this leg was a short leg of 2 hours 45 minutes, but it was challenging because we were entering Atlantic and landing in the middle of the ocean in a small island, which has a joint base of Portuguese Air Force and US Air Force. So that is the first time we got to interact with some of the US Air Force officials there. And from Azores Island, that is Lajes Air Base, to Gander in Canada was a very fair bit of long leg all the way over Atlantic, and that is when we crossed Atlantic for the first time. And if you see, by this time we had crossed 4 oceans. And this was the first time Indian Air Force Indian Air Force fighters were going across 4 oceans to participate in a outside Indian airspace exercise ever. So that was a good feeling that we had crossed all these, oceans absolutely as per our plans, doing everything right, and giving surprises after surprises to people en route who were not very confident of receiving us and seeing us off because of our probably whatever ideas they had in their mind, and also because of the old machines that we were flying. So that was a good feeling when we landed at Gander. And Gander is, of course, a very small base. Mostly, it's a civilian base purely. And then, of course, we landed hopped across North Bay and Edmonton in Canada before we went to Eilsen. And the best part was at Eilsen, the entire trail as planned, landed together, and to the surprise of many Americans and Britishers that were expecting us not to do so, but they were very happy to receive us.
Wonderful. So, let me back you up a little bit. Who were these crew? Were these regular squadron pilots? Did they specially selected? What were the QRs that you used to select this team? What is, other than ferrying and things like that?
So, as far as the selection of aircrew was concerned for Jaguars, what we had done was we had selected aircrew from all the 4.5 squadrons that we had of Jaguars. Uh, Primarily, they were all fully ops aircrew with air-to-air refueling qualified uh, pilots. And as far as their instrument ratings were concerned, they were either master green or green pilots because we had taken into consideration the weather that was likely to be over Europe and Canada and the exercise area.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And aircraft, there were the old traditional Jaguar, there was the maritime Jaguar, there was the Daring Jaguars in Gorakhpur. Which type of Jaguars had they all been fitted with air-to-air refueling capability, and which Jaguars did you take to the exercise?
Yeah. So, as far as the aircraft were concerned, all Jaguars have right through and through air-to-air capability, which was not put to use till the time we had the tankers, unless we were, exercising with Royal Air Force in some exercising in the sense where tankers at times have come and demonstrated that capability to us in India. But apart from that, we had not used the air-to-air refueling capability of a Jaguar till the time we got the IL-78 tankers. And therefore, all the Jaguars had air-to-air refueling capability. However, we selected the Daring Jaguars, which was the basic requirement as far as the platform was concerned. And we had modified our Daring Jaguars to have ILS viewer TACAN capability, which we picked up that capability of Dornier aircraft. So the antennas were from Dornier, and of course the remaining kits we had got it, which were used for fighter aircraft, and also we modified all the Jaguars with DVRS system, which was not there. We had those cameras in to record the head-up display, but then we modified all the Jaguars for these two systems, which was the basic necessity to participate in exercise in US.
Okay. Just tell me, what is that system about, sir? DVRS?
DVRS is your digital video recording of all the parameters of the. That means digitally it records all the parameters, and that is linked to your. Since the Jaguar does not have a FADEC, it is linked to your, the fighter data recorder system. So all your flying parameters are recorded by that system digitally, including your weapons, readiness and release, as well as your head-up display. So all that is digitally recorded into the VRS cassette, and it can be replayed subsequently. So that system was not existing in Daring Jaguars those days. Subsequently, of course, all our Jaguars have been modified with these kind of systems as a part of Daring 2. but the Darin 1 aircraft did not have this facility. So that got modified. Originally, the Jaguars, before what we had, they were fit, which came from UK as an interim Jaguars, they had ILS on board, but which were disconnected because the Indian Air Force that time thought of shedding of the ILS, which was not available in all the fighter bases. So we didn't have the ILS on Jaguars, but we modified ILS VOR TECAN because for flying in international aerospace, you required all these systems.
Right, got it. Mm-hmm.
Just need 70, Roger, report time southeast, connection for the midway, and field selected.
And so coming back to the ferries you were talking about, let's just pick one of the long legs, which is say Azores to Gander. I was looking while you were speaking, it's what about 1,500 nautical miles. So how would you do something like that? This would be multiple refuelings, I presume, and I'm presuming there is a true airspeed difference between the IL-76 and the Jaguars. So how does one plan it? It just seems quite mind-boggling.
Yeah, so this was one of the longest legs. It required a lot of, understanding of not only the weather, but also we had to check on availability of, ships and the routes on the ocean, because should somebody eject over Atlantic, it would be, quite a disaster if we couldn't recover the pilot. So that was also part of our planning process. So, not only the refueling part of it in the air, but also the contingencies that I was mentioning a little while earlier, they were very, very challenging. And luckily, all the agencies which were involved in this, and they all contributed to our planning process, and for us to understand from them as to how to go about doing it. So that was one interesting part of it. And of course, our DAs and our air attaches in various places, they were very, very proactive in terms of providing us help. Like I remember then Air Commodore Sumit Mukherjee, who was the air attache in US. Almost every day at 4 o'clock in the morning, we used to be on call, because that is the time, 4 to 5 o'clock, that is the time he used to drive back from his office. And that was a 1 hour drive as far as he was concerned. So 1 hour we were on, and those days there were no mobiles in India. So I was on my landline at home and, talking to him, taking inputs from him, and bombarding him with a lot of questions of this nature. And as far as actual trail planning is concerned, you asked a very pertinent question about the speed differences between the two platforms. So that goes as a part of planning. So his maximum speed to refuel and Jaguar's minimum speed to fly at that particular altitude. We had, sort of come to a nice compromise at both ends, and then based on that, we had also selected the level at which refueling was done. So refueling was done at a fairly low altitude, in the sense available low altitude, around say 15 to 20,000 feet, where Jaguar was well handleable as far as refueling requirements are concerned, and IL-78 could maintain his top refueling speed at that level. So that was one of the biggest challenge. So the refueling platform had to accelerate to his max refueling speed, and the receiver had to decelerate to minimum kind of refueling speed during that period of refueling. And we had 2.5 refuelings on the longest legs that we had. And guns, one of the biggest challenge during this time was not only the refueling planning, but if you recall, Jaguars never had autopilot.
So right.
The pilots had to physically fly very, very accurately for that longer period. So that was something which was very, very challenging on aircrew. And to top this everything, we had encountered some nasty weather during our leg from Edmonton to Eilsen, and from North Bay to Edmonton, then also earlier from Azores Island to Gander. Just to give you one exciting, story on this, this particular leg, we had planned to take off around 9 o'clock. But when we saw the weather, there were low clouds sitting almost between ground and 150 feet at Gander. And the air attaché, Air Commodore Sumit Mukherjee was telling me from there that it's not a good idea to launch right now, because I can see nothing from the ground. There's low clouds all over, and it's 8 by 8. That means the entire sky is covered. So what we had done on the other side, because of this input was available to us from the Met, and Sumit sir had also passed me the previous couple of days weather. So we studied the weather thoroughly, and we realized that by 11 o'clock these clouds go up like magic, and we have a little better skies for landing. So I took a call, because of course the ball was in my court, that we will delay the ferry by about an hour, and we will launch. And we will take a call at PNR as to how the clouds are behaving at Gander. And everything went off smoothly because the clouds behaved, the aircraft behaved, and I was thanking my stars that I had taken a little bit of tough decision to make sure that we all go safely and land at Gander, but we also move ahead on time. So and be on time. So these were some things which were challenging. And of course, subsequently on a long leg from Edmonton to Eilsen, we had a lot of excitement. At North Bay, we had a excitement because we had a nick on the blade and we had to change the engine. There was no shed available. There was no hangar available for us. And we took a call. It was drizzling. We made makeshift kind of a shade with the tarpaulins and all we had carried, with taking IL-76 tail as a shelter, and we changed the engine in that condition on the tarmac in North Bay. So a lot of excitements en route, and a lot of tough decision making as far as I was concerned, and of course the entire team was supportive of whatever I had to do, because I was taking advices from various experts available in the team. And we were 125 people on board in the trail, and remaining 75 guys came directly from India to Alaska, by civil air. So I had a good set of people. I had confident people, advising me, and we had all the spare support along with us. So it was exciting, and it was, giving us a lot of confidence in ourselves as we were traveling towards Alaska.
Okay, wow. 7,700 kilometers out from Azores, 700 kilometers to go to Gander. Must have felt incredibly lonely up there with, not a piece of land in a great distance from where you are. What was that feeling like? What altitude were you at? What were you looking? What were you seeing?
See, general ferry altitude used to be between 20 to 25,000 feet. So we were closer to 25,000 feet as far as normal routing is concerned. But for refueling, we used to come down to about 15,000 feet, or depending on the break-in cloud, because the weather had also to be negotiated. So we had studied the weather very, very well. And mind you, at Edmonton, I got the best experience of my life interacting with ATC and radar controllers, because in a controlled airspace to do a lot of these variations, you have to have everybody on board. And you are aware because of your aviation experience, but general public may not be aware. In a controlled airspace, to vary the altitudes like this and yet be safe, because there are other crossing traffic on those predetermined routes. So that is where the challenge comes, when you have coordination to be done with radar controllers, en route radar controllers. And we had minute to minute everything chalked out, interacting with them at Edmonton, because the weather demanded that we do refueling, in a break of about 100 miles in between Edmonton and Eilsen, because of the cloud break was only for that much of distance. So we studied the weather to that extent, and interacted with traffic controllers and radar controllers and the meteorology staff to get all these inputs and plan our ferry on this leg. And it was a fairly long leg, so we had to do 2.5 refueling. So it was a good challenge and a lot of excitement. And when you talk about emptiness in our that Atlantic leg, we had our private channels to chat with pilots, and we have a little bit of fun, and keep them enthused. And all these tanker pilots used to keep keeping a track of where his trail members are and how they look in the air, and stuff like that. So we were chatting on and major radio was done by the tanker pilot. So that was one relief to the fighter guys, because majority of the clearances on all were taken by tanker guys. And this Scout IL-76 did a fantastic job of giving us the real weather at our transit altitudes. And also he was warning the controlled controls en route about the trail coming and their requirements, live requirements, and their positions, actual positions. So every single team member was involved at every stage and contributing immensely to our success.
Got it. Great. So you arrive at Eilsen. What's that reception like? And you start then, I presume, some practice sorties for the exercise. And so take us through what happened once you reached there.
Yeah, so around 18 days spent on ferry, because we took breaks in between trying to cope up with the jet lag for the air crew and all. First time we were doing it, so we didn't want to hurry things up unnecessarily. And we landed at Eilsen on the 9th of August. That was the day. So that was the day when we. That was an alternate day of arrival as far as the receiving unit is concerned. And there is a unit which handles Cope Thunder exercise, which is called 353rd Combat Training Squadron. So as we had organized ourselves during initial planning conference, everything they had kept ready, and everything was done like a clockwork. But one interesting thing that I came to know later, which I must narrate here, that because Indian contingent was bringing in Jaguars and the IL-78s, which were IL-76 based platform based tankers, there were a lot of excitement amongst USAF people, Americans, and the Royal Air Force Britishers. And Britishers had stopped bringing their Jaguars for Cope Thunder exercise since 1996-97, and this was 2004. So they had bet on us, saying that Indian Air Force will not reach on the date that they had planned, and they will get delayed almost halfway through the exercise. And also, the maximum number of aeroplanes that they will come with is about 50% of the contingent. That means they were expecting 3 Jaguars maximum, 1 tanker, and 1 IL-76. And when they saw the Indian Air Force contingent landing, they counted all 10 aircraft, and a lot of people lost a lot of dollars or you know British pounds to each other on their bets. And I think that was the exciting thing, which I came to know later, much later, when these guys told me stories that courtesy you we have lost a lot of dollars and pounds. So that was exciting. And as far as the exercise per se was concerned, this 353 squadron commander had planned everything well. There was a exercise director who was of the rank of colonel, a little more service than me at that time, and he was the chief operations officer of U.S. Air Force base in Kadena, Japan. So he was the director for the exercise. So he conducted us initially through the briefings, and the CEO of 353 Combat Training Squadron, he conducted all the briefs about how to, what to expect there, and all the introductory briefing to all the air crew, and familiarize us with the, flying environment. Then also a whole heap of briefings took place from ATC controllers, radar controllers, the exercise controllers, the range officers, regarding minutest of the detail up to RT calls and stuff like that, for entire Indian Air Force contingent to familiarize themselves. And just to tell you, we were not the first ones to be the first. Even the German Air Force contingent, which is Germany is a part of NATO, but they were also participating with their tornadoes for the first time. So they were also there just after us, and we went through this briefing part of it together, familiarization visits everywhere, and then we had a week of practice sorties for flying familiarization with the area, with the methodologies of exit, and because exit and entry recovery to these bases are all IMC recoveries, unlike mostly fighter bases in India where we do VMC recovery and launches. So that was something our air crew had to get familiarized with, and the exercise area was vast. Vast is not the word actually, and one had to really get used to that area, and the altitudes that our aircraft were flying was from low levels or ultra low levels to medium levels. So all that, and being a part of big packages was something that though we had trained ourselves, but we were not very, very familiar. That means that was not our bread and butter by then. But then that was one of the things that these boys practiced together. And another first time was flying under control of AVACs, because we didn't have AVACs those days. So AVACs were deployed. So flying under control of AVACs was a little bit of different cup of tea. And that is what we practiced for those 5 days that we got. And by the end of that, we were all ready to participate in the exercise.
Just need 70, Roger, report time southeast, connection, for midway, and selected.
So tell us a little more about some of these things. So what is a package, and what does it mean to be flying under a big package? And what's the difference when you have AVACs controlling you? So give us a sense of the practical differences from your pilot's perspective.
Yeah. So a package is a bunch of, see, first of all, this entire exercise was having a red force, which was the aggressive force. Then we were part of the blue force. sorry, Mike, a little bit of correction here. We were part of the Blue Force. We were the aggressor force. Then aggressor in the sense that we were supposed to go and strike the targets in enemy land. We were part of the big coalition, activity, and the Red Force was, some of the U.S. Air Force F-15s and F-16s, and also the Japanese Air Force's F-15. So that constituted a Red Force, and they were supposed to be defending their territory. And both sides had AVACs to control. And when I call package consists of AVACs, air-to-air refuelers, transport aircraft which were used for para-dropping. Then you had fighters and fighter bombers to do strikes on enemy territory. Then you have the air defense aircraft which are escorting the fighters in enemy territory, and you have the platforms like F-18s and F-16s doing a bigger role of air defense, where they sanitize the area ahead of the strike and escorts which are going to the enemy territory. So that is what is the full package. And this package is supposed to be entirely controlled from AVACs. So, and ground radars are kind of standby because their coverage is limited, whereas AVACs can see much more because of the fact that it is flying in the air. So the radar is looking at much bigger area. So it can keep track of each and every aircraft in the package. And it is AVAC's responsibility. That means the controllers who are controlling this package. Okay, in this package again, the AVAC divides this entire package because it's a huge air activity that is going on. So they have controllers given their area of responsibility of certain sub packages. So it's a very intricate kind of a scenario one can picturize, that sub packages are being controlled by individual controllers, and the overall control from AVAC is looking at this entire package, and this entire package is offensively entering enemy territory to strike the target, and that area is being cleared by these air defense aircraft in advance, as well as there are escorts which are giving cover to the strike aircraft. So that is the intricacy of a package. So that's what was. And once the package is pushed into the enemy territory, that is cleared by the AVAC to enter the enemy territory, that is the time you are looking at the enemy pushing their package to intercept your strike aircraft, and they knocking down the air defense aircraft. So there is an intermingling of enemy with your aircraft there, and sorry, that is a time where your close controlling takes place. So at times you are calling your aircraft a little back, pushing them forward. All these kind of close controlling takes place from AVAC. It's an interesting activity that takes place during the mission.
Okay, great. That's good to hear.
And one more thing, and all these things was being monitored by a force called White Force on the ground, which was taking all the live inputs, and subsequently, of course, like I said, the DVRSs were being played, the pods which were carried on board aircraft, which monitored every activity of yours, every parameter of your, every radar work of yours, and that was replayed on the ground in front of the White Force for making sure that the results that you were quoting were true or false, and every time who had a better of whom. So that was being monitored by the White Force.
Got it. So describe some of the missions once the exercise started that we participated in.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly jump. The major activity was what I explained of a mission, that how to plan this entire package to deceive the enemy, because we had the intelligence coming from various sources. So based on that intelligence, these packages were planned, how to enter enemy airspace, what multiple layers to use. That means from ultra low level to high level, how to send your strike aircraft and escorts along with them, how to have the screening done ahead of the package going without disclosing the exact area from where your aircraft will enter enemy territory. So all that planning went on the ground, and the mission commander for the day had to brief this entire activity. That means he and his team plans this entire package and briefs the entire package crew, because everybody had to be precise. There was no leeway for any delays or reaching on your points early, because everything was so well designed that if you miss out on your window, which was plus minus uh, 10 seconds window, you were out of the package. That means you were taken out from that package and you didn't get opportunity to reach your goal. So that is the kind of planning that went through, and this was covered with respect to each and every individual segment by the mission leader. And Indian contingent got this responsibility on the day 3. That means in the first week, what we had done as part of planning, we were flying only the PM missions. That means the second half day of the mission, because we were into the exercise for the first time. We were getting used to these multinational environment for the first time. So we had decided that we will participate. There used to be AM and PM mission. So first week we will do PM missions, because and attend the briefs and debriefs of AM missions, because there are a lot of lessons to be carried home and discussed within ourselves. And we used to participate in PM missions for the first week, and subsequent week we participated in AM missions. So we were the leads in many of the days. But on the third day, they asked us to plan the mission. So Wing Commander Khera, who was leading the Jaguar element, he and his boys did the entire planning for the mission, and briefed the entire contingent. It went off extremely well. Only factor that hampered that day's mission was the weather over target area. The weather was extremely poor that day, so none of the aircraft could actually reach the target, except for one of our IL-76, which was to do the para drop. Despite that kind of weather, it did 0-0 para drop on the area that it was supposed to do, which was flown by the IL-76 leader, Group Captain Mohanty. And everybody had a lot of praises for Mohanty that day and his crew to go through the mission in that kind of weather with such precision. And that left a big mark on the participants there, or from various countries, that gave that confidence of professionalism of Indian Air Force air crew in such like missions.
Now,
And
I've got Eilsen on the map. Where was the opposing force? What was their territory? What were the sorts of targets that you were striking?
yeah, so 70,000 square kilometers was the area north of Eilsen, if you see, and the uh, the opposing force was based at northwest of us, and that is where they were coming in from to defend the territory. Uh, of course, this when I say this vast area, uh, the exercise days were uh, planned in such exercise day areas were planned in such a way that this area got narrowed for a particular day. So of course that area itself was big enough for people to defend, as well as people to carry out strikes over enemy territory. And they have a big, very, very big range, live range, where the targets are displayed, which are depicting actual live targets. Like they have runway, they have logistics nodes, they have railway nodes actually set up on the ground, where one had to pick them up physically and target. And as a part of int report, all these pictures, some of them would come to you, and that is how you have to study your target systems and plan your strikes. Multi-directional strikes we could plan, multi-level attacks we could plan on these targets. So all that went in based on the live range which was available. And this live range was really something that we were doing it for the first time. Though we have ranges, we have dummy targets, but these were depicting exactly like live targets that one would get to see during actual war.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. And so the exercise lasted 14 days?
Yeah.
You were flying every day, pretty much?
Yes. So we had, like I said, we had first week flying the PM missions, and the second week flying AM missions. So that means, of course, we were during summers in Alaska, so the daylight is 24 hours there. The sun would just hide for a little while, say about for about 45 minutes to an hour or so. So, and that much of time you have twilight, so there are no actual dark hours or night hours as such. But of course the clock keeps ticking, so we had AM and PM missions, blocks. So we we flew this first week AM missions, second week PM missions, and all days we flew, and all missions went through without even a single abort. So that was something which was, something which was even surprising to all of us, because the old machines, our maintenance crew did a fantastic job of not only maintaining the aircraft but also recovering the aircraft very fast, because we didn't have a standby aircraft for missions. So every time we had to launch all of them together, recover them, and subsequently the maintenance crew used to really work very, very hard to get the platforms, because the snags are bound to take place. Every machine used to give some problem or the other, but this maintenance crew did fantastic job. And also we had our own drivers with us, so they used to do their best to get the aircraft refueled in time. We had dedicated refuelers with us, given by USAF. Then also we had taken for the first time non-combatants, 5 of them, to make sure that our tarmacs are kept clean, our aircraft are kept spick and span, absolutely, so that we don't lose out on even 1 mile of range because of something hanging on the surface of the aircraft. So it was a beautiful teamwork. And these 5 guys, non-combatants, being part of the team, taking them all the way to Alaska, they were thrilled with life, and they were, working more than 24/7, I would say.
Right, got it. Wow, amazing.
Just need 70, Roger, report time southeast, Greenwich, for the midway, and field selected.
What were some of the other Air Forces like, and any interesting experiences that you had? Did you all get bounced on any of your strikes, and if so, how did that turn out?
Yeah, so we had F-16, F-15 tankers, AVACs from United States Air Force participating. Then we had the Tornadoes from Royal Air Force. then Hornets from Canadian Air Force, German Air Force had got their Tornadoes. Then we had also interesting participation with of US National Guards with F-16s. Then we had Singapore Air Force with their F-16 and also Jaguars, that is the Japanese Air Force with F-15. So these were the overall participants in the exercise that were flying, and of course we had some Royal Air Force tankers also participating.
Now, the US Air Force
And
tanking methodology is different, isn't it? Where the boom operator flies the boom into place in the aircraft as opposed to ours.
yeah,
What are the
yeah.
RAF and the Germans and all that? How do they refuel like us?
Yeah. So I'll just complete that participation part of it and come back to answering your question. And we had observers also coming in. So we had interesting observers from Bangladesh, where their team leader was a MiG-29 pilot, and we had a Mongolian observer team. One colonel and his team participating to observe all these exercises, and they were very impressed with our flying part of it, of course, but they were also impressed with our IGLA, that is the shoulder fired missile contingent that we had taken along for air defense part of the exercise. And they were very impressed with our IGLA simulators because that is something that they had never seen it in their Air Force IGLA unit. So, the observers part of it also was very interesting. Now, coming to your question regarding this, differences of refueling with boom. So, see, these tankers have got a boom as well as a bucket. So they have both. Some of the tankers have got both, but they prefer boom because boom is sort of easier to be flown because the boom operator operates the boom and engages. The fighter has to just do steady flying. He doesn't have to, engage the probe. So that is much easier to do comparatively. And the other biggest advantage is the flow rate of the fuel. So the refueling takes place faster. So you have to engage the refueler for much shorter time. But since we didn't have that facility on us, and since we were participating for the first time, so we were restricting ourselves to engaging our own refuelers. But the other air forces, they being part of NATO, they regularly do it with each other. So there was no that as far as they were concerned, there was no excitement as such. But what we did was that we send our air crew whenever we got an opportunity to fly in the refueler with boom and get that experience as to how these engagements take place and what are the procedures that are followed from the boom side. So subsequently, our air crew did participate in other exercises with this kind of refueling. So that became a stepping stone for us to bring back a lot of lessons, learned during this exercise as far as boom refueling activity is concerned.
Fascinating. Okay, great. And so, coming back to my question of did you get bounced on some of those things, and if so, how did that turn out?
So so when you have AVACs on both sides, it's bound to happen that your strikes, your packages get bounced at various stages. You try to save yourself and reorganize your package to push it through. So all that was part of our planning processes, and also it got executed in some cases. We got bounced. We got killed. Some of our elements got killed in the air, and they were removed from the combat instantaneously, and the remaining packages went through. So we did get bounced, we did get killed. So it was not that it was a smooth sailing all through, but our kill ratios were what it was lesser than what we were expecting it to be. Being a platform which doesn't have much of self-defense capability. So therefore, the defense capability offered to us was of a little higher value than the aircraft like F-18 and Tornado, which had a little more self-defense capability. So that way, we were in some of the Tornadoes which didn't have self-defense capability. They were also offered a little higher, defense capability by during package planning. So our attrition rate during the exercise was lesser than what we had expected, but it was there. So that is undeniable. And but what was interesting was our pilots' skills were appreciated by each and everybody in terms of uh, spotting the enemy in time, whether it was uh, on on calls from AVAX or on their own, and taking actions well in time, uh, which were really well appreciated by all the mission commanders in their debriefs, and also by the at the end of it by the White Force, which was in charge of covering the entire day's results. So they had also appreciated on many counts the role played by Indian Air Force pilots.
Got it, got it. Great. And the ferry back, anything exciting happened on the way? It was pretty normal now that you had that experience of ferrying out.
Ferry back was absolutely as planned. We had, we had about 14 days of ferry planned on the route back. Uh, there was no excitement. Of course, normal unserviceabilities and stuff like that we came across, but the aircraft were recovered in time. One of the biggest challenge that we faced was not the uh, ferry related stuff, but what happened was this engine that we had changed in North Bay. Uh, our chief and his staff and uh, particularly the maintenance fraternity in air headquarters, they advise that there is only one engine spare left with Jaguars, so it's better to send an engine. And that logistics exercise was a nightmare for me because uh, sending an engine which is coming to military base or military equipment coming all the way through to Alaska was taken on by a Barman lorry. And you know, when it used to be day in India, we used to be taking rest there, and all the phones will buzz to tell me what is happening, it is not happening, or something more, some paperwork is required to be done, and some permissions required, and blah blah blah. So my phone used to be buzzing all the night, and ultimately we was what engine we were supposed to get in Eilsen landed up chasing us in uh, in Canada. Okay, and there to offload the engine and load it on the aisle was another nightmare that I went through. But I think that was also one of the big big lessons that we learned as to how to react to logistics requirement or how to plan the logistics requirement, because this is something that we had not, this contingency we had not thought of. So that was for the entire contingent and for the air headquarters. It was one of the big lessons learned as to how to go about doing this. So I was happy that that happened, and that we did intercept the engine somewhere en route, and all went off well. And Actually, ferry back was like a piece of cake for us. Luckily, the weather gods were decent enough, not giving us any heart attacks en route. Uh, we came back absolutely as planned.
Excellent. Great. So, just, as we wrap up, I know I've taken a lot of your time. Just reflect on some of the lessons learned, and what was the process we followed to take some of those lessons and pass that down the line, make changes to our own ways of working based on what we had experienced there.
Yeah, that's a very very big and important part of this entire exercise. The very fact that we are doing many things, many things for the first time. We had gone to great extent to go through each and every aspect of this planning process for the exercise and the execution part of it. And thanks to my entire team who was with me, particularly I would like to take a few names here, like then Wing Commander Amit Dev, Wing Commander Squad Leader Arunachalam, then Squad Leader Java Muhammad, Squad Leader Arun Gandotra, all these people, along with the team leaders and individual sub team leaders, that is Group Captain Shauvik Roy, who was leading the IL-78 element. IL-76 was led by Group Captain Mohanty, and Jaguars element were led by Wing Commander Khera, then CO 14th Squadron. So their team for the element, and this entire lot which was with me, because Amit Dev that time acted like a coup. Arunachalam was like a ops adjutant. So we had set up this entire team as a air base in India, and we had a logistician with us by name Squad Leader PVRN Sarma. Then we had a medical officer with us by name Squad Leader Natraja. He was an aviation medicine specialist who did a lot of work pre-exercise as well as during the entire part of the exercise, monitoring the air crew, giving them sleeping pills as and when it was necessary, monitoring their rhythms, biorhythms. So it was this entire process of planning which was which brought us to this level of execution. And what we realized during this entire process was that this is a logistician's activity, so that operational logistics is something that we in Indian Air Force that time, though we had the thought process of supporting operations through logistics, but that real operations logistics nodes or operations logistics infrastructure, what we should have, that came about as a biggest lessons learned for us from this exercise. And the concept of mission op control, which involves operational element, big logistics element, and all the support activities that take place to make sure that the mission goes through at both ends. That means at the launch end as well as the receiving end. So this is something that we learned during this exercise, which was tremendous. Secondly, the authority that is to be exercised by each and every element, right from the team leader down to the last man in the team. Everybody has got their responsibilities chalked out, their job contents very well specified. How to execute that and to what level that responsibility and authority is to be exercised is something that we really learned through this process. And that is what the biggest lesson that I carried and passed it on as observation to everybody back home. So, the other things were whatever was required in terms of modification to platforms. We insisted that we have even on trainers, we have Jaguar trainers, we have the refilling probes today, because for a long time we were feeling the need for it, so that the training happens faster and better. Then also the need to have AVACs, that got pushed because of our participation in the live exercise like this with multiple nations participating. And if if we wanted to be a regional, we wanted to have a regional footprint, okay, which was our aspiration, not for having a command and control over the area, but for keeping maintaining peace and tranquility in the area that we feel that we have the reach now. So these were some of the important activities that came as lessons to us, which we put down, and thankfully the government of India reacted on it. Our higher management in Air Force supported each and everything that we recommended, and today we have AVAC, we have AW platforms, we have every platform in the fighter platform that has air-to-air refilling capability. And we also recommended that this participation only in Cope Thunder may not give us the best. We must participate in Red Flag at Nellis, and we must alternate probably between Cope Thunder and Red Flag, depending on our availability of the platforms, our commitment otherwise. And we must continuously fly with these advanced air forces, so that we learn more and more, and they also get used to our way of doing things, because they were quite impressed with us, the way we handle things with even older platforms, how we make best of whatever we have on the platform in terms of debriefing tools, how we go to nitty-gritties and get maximum out of the each mission. So all that was very well appreciated by them. So then we have ACMIs on most of the platforms now, which came as a part of lessons learned, because each and every platform that participated in this exercise had ACMIs. That is, ACMIs are the pods which record everything that you do from startup to switch off, and you can replay the whole thing and replay with respect to the other platforms also. So it becomes a complete recap of aerial situation so easily. So these are some of the lessons we learned. The biggest lesson that I carried and the team that went and came back carried was that nothing is impossible as far as Indian Air Force is concerned. If somebody gives us a task and we have to execute it, that confidence was brought back as the biggest lesson, because we did not leave a single spanner behind as far as the contingent was concerned. We all went together, we all participated together, and we all came back together on the Indian soil, absolutely as per our plans. So that was something that was really encouraging, and that is what I think keeps us going off as far as the subsequent exercises go on foreign soil. So having not had any precedence of taking the fighters out of India ever, to do this was a great team effort. And another point was that the faith that was that was in the minds of people back home. That is, when I went to Vice Chief to ask him whom do I report to from there, so he just asked me a counter question: who is your boss? I said Air Commodore Gogoi. So he says, then where is the doubt? So I was in touch with Air Commodore Gogoi, and I was reporting to him on all the day-to-day activities once, and subsequently we since this was an exercise where we used mobile phones for the first time. We learned fast enough as early as after landing at Doha that I don't have to give him a call. I just can, push through SMS and he will get SMS within in almost real time. And that is a methodology that we followed to, communicate with each other. And I was just talking to him, and he was, talking to me on a day-to-day basis. And that is what kind of faith that Indian Air Force had in the entire team. So that was something that was amazing.
Right, got it. Super, wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. This has been really very enlightening, and I think with fresh appreciation of all of the complexity and challenges that go into participating in such exercises. And I want to thank you for taking the time to explain it to us, and of course, thank you for your service. And
Thank you, Gana. It's always pleasure coming back and chatting with you. And I think I must thank on behalf of the entire Cope Thunder 04 team that you're taking this to everybody in the environment to understand that this team of people that I named and not named but participated has sort of created history for Indian Air Force and India in 2004, and now left a legacy where people go for exercises abroad at a drop of a hat. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Visual computer before graduation. Just 70, Roger, report time southeast, connection, for commit way, and field selected.
Well, folks, that's all we have time for this week. Join us again next week. In the meantime, sign up for updates at blueskiespodcast.com. There you'll find links to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also write to us with your comments, questions, suggestions, and feedback from the website or to blueskies@prganapati.com. Subscribe to the podcast on any podcasting platform such as Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and even on YouTube. If you like what you heard, share it with your friends, give us a rating in your favorite podcasting app, and write us a review. It will help other people find us. I want to give my thanks to Saurav Chordia for our logo and Prithvik for the music. I want to reiterate that all the views expressed here are personal, and this podcast has not been approved by or reviewed by the Air Force, Ministry of Defense, or any branch of the government. In the meantime, stay safe and Jai Hind.